5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I see a lot of confusion and chaos on Cosmite, so I want to go over some very basic plays and concepts. I will cover some defensive aspects, but primarily the video is going to cover only the A push for now. Eventually, I would like to cover B in the future. Keep in mind, I'm a low elo player, so feel free to point out any potentially wrong or bad advice. Every round has its own win condition, and just understanding the concepts should improve your game plan if you find the map confusing. Thank you for checking it out. Many times I find the culprit of a failed attack on Cosmite to be a lack of vision. Often I see players use util and gain no value from it. Poor positioning in general, standing in the choke points or exposed areas. In my opinion, the way the map is being played is changing. Leona seems to really hamper the strength of double marksman and iron wall plays from my perspective experience. If your team has sniper gods, TM, double marksman is still just as strong. However, the rest of us must take consideration for us lower elo players. I think Deathball is an easier comp to run typically. Planting early and playing post-plant is great, but also requires great vision and situational awareness. Defenders also evolved and have many ways to deny plant safely. Let's look first at the characters and potentially key interactions.
Attackers win!
Let's start with defense so we know what to expect on attack. Nobu's very strong in general. His awakening grants him scans on the majority of the plant site, this forcing less than optimal planting positions or plays. Take out his pylons if they're being problematic, or leave them if they're not doing anything so he is denied cooldown. Keep in mind that oftentimes when his ult is up, he will use his EMP to scan the site post-plant. Alright, so for visualization on Nobu, you can see his pylons, the blue effect here. With his Awakening 2, you step foot in the blue, you will be scanned, and this helps the defenders know exactly where you're planting. Flavia is the best duelist on defense. You're gonna have to fight Flavia, so better just be comfortable with that. Vet is funny. I think she's really good on this map. Ice and frag grenades are a great combo for denying the A plant. Also, if you neglect to buy A2 and A3, you can use Faye to push attackers off of the plant. Vet isn't mandatory, but comes highly recommended. Next up is Leona. A3 is usable here. She pretty much creates off angles for defenders. She uses blocks in post plant to make it hard for double marksmen. So she's overall a pain. Check out the Leona A3. So if you're playing behind the block right here, you can line up your cursor with this, and then just double jump and deny the plant. If they're planting in any of the default positions behind even the iron wall. I thought that was pretty cool. Alright, just for some visualization, some of the things that I see is, it doesn't necessarily need to wrap all the way around, but I do see blocks here that stop you from papering up into heaven here. And then I see this angle here as well. I don't know the specifics of how you build it, but it's something in this area of ballpark where the angle you get is pretty good. There's a version that wraps around and pokes to the front. I just don't know how to build it, but even just with these 3 blocks, you can deny plants and poke them as they are rotating in. And then you can also shoot the economy Q that I showed earlier, but another very powerful position. Maybe this will kind of give you some ideas on, possible angles to expect. There's one more I'm going to cover. Here's another setup you should at least kind of be aware of. I don't think it's as strong as the others, but it can be if you're not prepared for it. So in a position like this, you can shoot down, come down. So one more thing to just be cognizant of. Lastly, I want to show some hop-ups and my attempt at making the wraparound wall. So if you need to jump on this pillar or want to play, if you like to play up there with Audrey, you can just double jump onto it here, fly over, but to get to this block pretty easily. This jump's a little tricky. I think I messed up a bit on it, but you can get up here and then watch from this catwalk, and then depending on how they have the blocks positioned or what they have going on, and hopping up here you can fly across too from here. Last, I just kind of want to talk about some of the other characters who can offer some kind of value. I like double controller on Cosmite when I'm on defense, but really play what you can. Yugidi's a great with the snails. Audrey can ult through the wall or just kind of poke with the turret to see if she can get any intel through the wall or through smokes. Madalena stops a lot of the plays with denying them access to particular walls or making them unable to paper. Michelle has a lot of really good lineups. I think she's stronger on V, but she's still Michelle. You know, she has a lot of room to make plays. Fuchsia can scan through the wall, is pretty tanky in general. Galatea has card and scans. I think there's a lot of unique positions she can play, so she always brings some kind of value. And then you have Kokona, who, if you can hit your shots and, you know, line up and time your reses, that those can definitely be game changers. So I think this is kind of what you'll see on defense, or at least these are some of the stronger characters and things to be aware of on defense. Alright, so now I want to talk about attack. Same as defense. Play what you know, play what you can. You know, it doesn't matter who you pick. You can make any team comp work, but some are better than others, and, you know, they have different play styles. Some of the team comps that kind of tend to pan out more so are double controller, double marksman, deathball, which deathball is essentially just sticking together and trying to send your 5 or 4 stack into anything less than itself and just run things down and run people over and rotate through them. So you can make anything work, you know, play the characters that you can and see what your win condition is with the characters you can play. But just kind of looking at some of the options here, I mean, you bring Ming every round, right? Like, Ming is great, you bring Ming. No other character is Ming, so you bring Ming. Mara, I think Mara has like a unique skill set here. I think her A2 removes a lot of annoying problems for your team potentially, regardless if it's Leona behind the block in center of sight, or camping in a weird position in her blocks, or an Audrey turret. You can really use it to push people out of spaces in a different way. So I think that the synergy between Ming and Mara here is unparalleled. And then you definitely need some kind of intel or scan. Lewine lends herself more so to a death ball or double controller style comp, depending on how you want to play it. But you definitely need some kind of scans. You need Lewine economy for sure. Then you kind of get into a more flex area. You know, play what you know, play what your team can. I like to do Fragrance. I think that her Q and A1, like, I like to rotate out of A. If things go bad, the push goes bad, I'm going to call for a rotate either to B or potentially just out for a retake. And during this time, being able to top off your team's health or provide certain buffs during pushes or in Deathball, I think she's really strong. Is this her strongest map? I don't know. You know, the more rotates you do, probably the more her value goes up. But really, she's not mandatory. I think that, you know, she's a good suggestion. But any of the characters can work. And then lastly, I kind of have Reichi and Meredith. From my understanding, Reichi's a little more powerful here, and he isn't mandatory. Like, none of the characters are mandatory, but I think he also adds a unique way to interact with the map. So I think he's important in that regard. But if you want to run a pure death ball, you can swap him out for Meredith, or if you have a person who plays Meredith but doesn't play Raichi, you work around the strengths that you have for your team comp. But Ming, Mara, and a scanner are a pretty good start to having a solid team comp on attacking Cosmite. If you can bring Raichi and either another some kind of supporter duelist or even another controller, I think that you stand good odds. Next, I want to talk about kind of a potential default defense to at least to put yourself in at least some of the right mind space to think about potential issues or potential things that could crop up. So the grenades are a suggestion. They're just there to kind of, if there's somebody playing a particular position and they're good and know what they're doing, they're probably going to bring specific util. Not always the case, but it's at least something to keep in mind and kind of have an imaginary board of, how could things play out. Especially early on, you'll probably see more default kind of positions or ideas, and as they adapt to your team, they will change, and then you'll have to meet them and adapt as well. So typically you have somebody trying to spot early. I think it's a good spot for Flavia, but whoever is actually spotting here, there's a chance they'll bring an interceptor. There's a chance that they'll try to get an early frag. They may use a slow grenade. But the point character here is just trying to get early intel. Flavia is good because she can use her Q to just get out of dodge and not have to really deal with the ramifications of anything. So she's a pretty good pick here in the front. Then you have Nobu in the back here in Heaven. And at least when I do Nobu or Audrey or anybody where I have to kind of play back here, I'll typically bring an interceptor. I'll throw the interceptor either on myself or behind the, not sure what to call it, this tower here that's forward, kind of like on Space Lab. So I can throw it out there, but if they already have that space, then it's not going to do you much good, and you're better off probably throwing it on yourself. So he's going to set up his pylons and stuff to gather intel, and he also has the DMR to poke long range here. He can actually take some fights. I mean, he really probably doesn't want to always be dueling snipers, but he can at least participate or engage in the length of this lane. And then if you're playing this position, you absolutely need some kind of stall grenade. Slows are good if you don't have Madalena, because you can stop them from the hop up onto Heaven. They can't paper onto the wall underneath. Or a windstorm grenade to just not allow them through the door. I think that, something along these lines is going to be default for whoever is playing this position. You can expect some of this utility in there, regardless of the character. And then now, more so, you're starting to see Leona get picked. She can create a really powerful angle here on the side of Elbow, where she can watch, essentially, as they push up into Heaven if there's no wall, or, do Leona things, right? She can hop over here behind the box in sight and do A3 stuff. She can literally set up anywhere with her blocks, so kind of always have to keep an eye out. But she might bring another interceptor, another frag grenade. I think frag grenades are strong here too because they also go through the wall. So I think part of the point I'm trying to get across with this is the amount of options that the defenders have to stop the A plant, or especially an early A plant now, it's very high. There's a lot of things you can do, and frag grenades are just another one. Leona's pretty powerful here from my understanding. And then at least in my team comps typically, or with my duo, we run a vet and we run her in mid. She can kind of use her invisibility to spot here mid, and then she can just fast rotate to whatever side she's needed. So if we get intel that they're going A, great, she's already halfway there. Or if we get intel that she's going B, she can peel here. So, and I mentioned it earlier when I mentioned the character, but if you don't buy A2 or A3, you can use the bear to just endlessly push people off of the plant. I mean, are they going to always allow it? No, but it might be worth considering in to some degree. Like the snowballs are very nice if you can get them to fight on the ice or create plays with them, but denying them plant is also very powerful. So, you know, if they are being very stubborn, you can just send the bear in and get them off the plant. But I like her here in mid. As I said, she can, you know, get to where she needs to be. I think it's a pivotal place to play somebody. And her grenade, she can do what she wants. Since she has ice, I think frags again are also pretty good. And then slow and interceptor, you know, use your playstyle. These are all just suggestions or things you may encounter from players in specific positions. And then lastly, me myself, unless it's a read or something that I'm anticipating, I think that only having one player to spot B is usually ideal. I mean, not always, right? But you know, there's a lot you can do. I know that Michelle has some pretty good stuff, some pretty good setups she can do here, but so does Yugiri, so does, you know, do a lot of characters. One of my favorites, it's not as strong as a lot of these other options, but I like to go Galatea and poke and fight and then just card back into heaven and, you know, deny the long angle here, or at least put up some kind of contest. But I think I think this player probably should also bring a windstorm grenade. I like the frag for as they're running down here. You know, they're running from spawn to push up. You can get quite a bit of damage with a frag. So you manage to land that, and then she has turrets or, you know, stuff set up here. She hits you with that frag, you jump in and get zapped by some of the turrets, and then you get windstorm grenaded and, you know, can't deal with it. I think that's kind of stuff is better when you have a teammate, but there's still potential there. So but I think this is kind of a like decent look into what a team who has an idea what they're doing would look like, especially early. The earlier the round, probably the closer you get to something like this. And I'm starting to see more dedicated. I'm starting to see 3 on A, and then 1 mid and 1 B more often. But, you know, don't be afraid to do the mix up and send another person to help out the Michelle or, you know, your other player that's watching B. You know, just having a second player there could definitely make or break some plays. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to cover this briefly. Also, I apologize. It looks like my my mouse pointing was kind of like disturbed somehow. So if any of it didn't make sense or needs clarification, feel free to ask or reach out or leave a comment. I'll clear it up. But sorry about that. Here we kind of have the same concept just for the attackers. There's not much to really think about here. On my on like when I play Ming or certain other characters like Lewin, I tend to go interceptor, smoke. I think they're important for taking space. Or in Lewin's case, smoke knife. Having 3 interceptors is probably about the number you would want. Just make sure you space them out, use them for different things. If your whole team just like throws them all at one engagement, or, you know, you're better off with other stuff. But try to space them out. You know, keep one maybe for early pushes, or then a team fight and maybe a post. You know, try to really get as much value out of them as you can. 3 smokes is kind of a high number as well, but I think that having something to play off of with the scans is pretty big. So I'd rather have the smoke than not. For Mara, I kind of you know, you can do what you want, but she's a duelist, so frag and slow or whatever have you. You know, I don't think it. You know, play what you're comfortable with. The only real takeaway I will honestly suggest is that if you don't run fragrance, that you probably should run somebody with 1 healing grenade. Like, make sure you at least bring 1. Don't bring more than 1, but bring 1 healing grenade. You know, it'll come in handy. And to add to that, as far as of needing 1 of something, if you're not bringing Meredith, it's probably beneficial for somebody on the team to bring a windstorm. While, windstorming into mid isn't, always the play. It shouldn't be your go-to. Sometimes you need to do it. It also doubles as a post-plant tool. So I think that make sure you bring, if you don't have Fragrance, bring a healing grenade. And if you don't have Meredith, bring at least one windstorm. But this is kind of, like I said, just my suggestion on some util to bring and, how to apply it. Alright, I want to cover the default knife for Louine. Do you want to save your Q for the Raichi wall or Meredith or Smokes? But the best knife spot is going to be the box here, since it essentially covers the entirety of the site. So you'll want to use this with your wall. You want to try to save it and synergize it with that. And then I want to show a few grenade lineups I know really quickly that come in handy from time to time, but aren't not mandatory by any means. You just stand on the corner of this box. It isn't super strict. Then you can just line it up at the top of this window still. And you can get a frag in there or possibly a slow. And then as you're rotating into heaven, you can place an interceptor along this wall in multiple places if you line it up. This will cover a big chunk of the rotate if you're worried about grenades here as you push up to heaven. And then lastly, this one doesn't block all of the line of sight, but if there's a player there, you can bounce a frag grenade over in that direction or do what you need to do with it. Now I want to cover economy cube. It also pretty much overlooks the entire site. And then obviously you can do it from further back or what have you. Next, let me introduce you to the Cosmite Raichi wall matrix by Cinco. Also, by the way, here's the interceptor I mentioned earlier for Nobu to play. But screenshotted, or this is just kind of a summary on the map of where the walls are. I'm going to go into detail about them now. Raichi can kind of use these walls to route and reroute your team or your push. So I think that this is what gives him the strength on the map. And while he may not be a must pick, I think that being able to reroute like this is pretty good. All right, for the first wall, I can just kind of sneak up here, get in the corner. I like to make the first wall a little wide. Also, be sure to push the wall all the way out. I like to leave us a little more room to actually play up here if we need to. But the whole purpose of this wall is just to cross into heaven, to cut them off from their teammates. If you have a 3 already, probably use a little tighter wall. You can actually play this one a bit while your team is rotating in, and then you still have the wall here in the back. I think that's kind of nice to have. But remember, the primary purpose of this wall isn't to plant or do anything fancy. It's just to isolate the people playing from mid and the players playing in heaven over here. Wall 2 is the planting wall, really the iron wall. Pretty much do it the exact same way. Come over here, and I use the map to line it up with the door frame, and then kind of just a smidge over. You have the post plant wall, but I'll be honest, I think this season this wall isn't as good just due to the amount of utility that, like, the ults and all of the interactions that pretty much disabled this plant spot. I guess I just don't find it as good, but you do need to know it. There might be situations where you have to pull it out. But wait till you have site control to plant, typically, unless you have good reads or good intel, something is going on to justify it. Because I know, at least in my games, from what I see, this wall gets disturbed quite a bit, mostly by like Faye or Leona A3. That would be cool. But Audrey, plus Nobu's gonna have scans, chances are. So, but you do got to know this wall. All right, now we have the third wall. The third wall I like to do from here. Typically, you don't have to use a smoke, obviously, but if you can't get this position, sometimes, you know, you got to use what you got to do to get in position to use your stuff. For this one, what I do is I flip the wall with the right mouse, push up here, and just line it up with the teleporter. You can angle it if you want, do some kind of other things, but in this wall, it's good if you have like really heavy congestion on heaven. So if you have 2 or 3 players playing up there, you can go for this wall and cut them off. Then you have to fight the ones mid here, of course, and in elbow, but you're still isolating the fight, and it's like not the most powerful wall you can do, but I think the real strength in this wall lies in the fact that if you're running a more death ball style comp, where you're planning on just running through them, you can just rotate fully into mid and then B. So if you know there's 2 or 3 playing in heaven, just use this one to cut through, maybe get a pick or 2, and then rotate all the way through to B, or possibly up the back of heaven if you want to. But at least this way you have options on, you can push through the site without having to backtrack or give anything up. And then, just to show what it looks like, you can go for a wall more like this. It'll still block those players, leave you a little more room to play here. I don't really think it matters, but just options. You probably can play with this wall to do better things. Also, if you're already pushed up and they gave you a little shack here, you can just do a straight wall and accomplish the same thing. Now we have the classic post-plant wall, typically seen with double marksman. Pretty basic. Another wall you probably have wiggle room to do what you want with. But we'll see. The plant, not too much to really say. I think that this wall isn't as powerful as it used to be due to more Leona and people starting to bring her on this site to play post plant or other shenanigans, but that's the default wall. The fifth wall is a wall that you use when you have A3. It actually gives you 3 different angles you can play if you do it properly. Move up to this corner. You can only do this once you have complete site control. And then I try to line it up to before it hits the box, but also covering most of the ramp in the back of... So with this wall, you can play mid, you can play the back alley here, and your heaven player can actually peek into spawn or into B. So you actually have 3 different advantages from this one wall. As I said, you can only do this if you have complete site control, but if you do and you have the potential to play this wall, the plant spot I've been theory crafting is right here, because you'll ideally have at least one person or two playing in heaven, and they can swing this here. If you happen to have somebody back over here, they can swing the bomb from here. Then your 3 mid players or 2 can swing the bomb from here or here. So you have man advantage and manage to completely take over the side or catch them off guard and have side control. I think that this wall could be pretty powerful. Alright, so now I want to kind of just visualize some of the pathing so it makes a little more sense. So let's say that you're getting ready to push A here, and you know that the players are playing in these positions. So what you can do is put up the wall to isolate the 3 players here playing mid. You've separated these 2 in heaven. As this wall goes up and you use your utility to take space and your abilities, your Qs, you know, sending 4 people up here and removing them while they're isolated is kind of the play. And then vice versa is also true. You have 3 people up here, push the team here. But where I see things start to fall apart is that if you're able to keep your man advantage, just continue to run through the team and take the team fights. But what I don't see is plays more like this, where you push through your whole team. You know, Ming is just representing the whole team here. Like, send 4 or 5 people here. Take out these 2 because it's a 4 or 5 v2. Then these people here are going to probably split up. So now you still have a man advantage on these here. But if you beat them or mistime them or they're out of position, depending on what you want to do in the state of your own team, just run through. Just use the site to get to the next site. You push through the site if you need to. You just run them over and then, you know, or continue to death ball. But I don't see this enough. I tend to see, you know, if we manage to get heaven, we tend to just stay in heaven instead of actually pushing out and continuing to take map control or using our numbers advantage. So like what that kind of would look like is, you know, let's go back to, so these 2 we managed to get, and you know, we have one rotating from mid who's late, and you have, you know, Yugi's on her way, like, or she maybe is already here. Just push through them and avoid them, and now we can plant on B. We have man advantage and we have full map control. And our stuff probably is off of cooldowns because we took the time to rotate. Or we can push into them because we'll still have the numbers advantage if we manage to win our gunfights convincingly. And if you're able to get these players to retreat or back off or try to do something, or they're just mistimed, because let's say even previously we did attack B first, we fast rotate to A, and they're lurking to see if we re-hit B for whatever reason. You know, ultimately, what I think 2 situations of map control look like for 2 different team comps is kind of like this. So if you manage to get this wall set up, or even just these positions, I think they're going to have a very hard time stopping you. We have map control and we have man advantage. Even if we just have one of the 2, if the whole team is on B, enemy team is on B, and we have this set up, this is going to be very hard for them to take regardless. And, you know, they're going to use their ultimates, they're going to try all that they can. But, you know, this is more what map control in this situation would look like, or one example of map control. You know, Ming gets to play this elbow, kind of have your brawlers here, your duelists here for the biggest fight, and then you have your snipers here. Economy, I've kind of been thinking this, and I don't really get to see it very often in my elo, but like the angle that Economy can hold from here all the way into B through spawn, or to rotate up here and watch the entire flank. I think this, in my opinion, is probably more strong than like the double, or is it the double marksman, right? So like when you look at the amount of map control we have with double marksman, you can have like Mara up here on, you know, doing the lurk, you know, whatever. You have people behind the wall. You know, you have to worry about the flank from the back here. And, you know, you kind of can still get pinched from mid or have other things go on. And then now with like Leona blocks and stuff like that, blocking this line of sight, I don't think this is really enough map control anymore to, you know, if you're gods and hit your shots, you know, it's not going to matter. This doesn't apply to you whatsoever. But, you know, I don't think that this position is as advantageous as this position. You know, to me, this map control is more solid, and I kind of showed it earlier in the fifth wall example for Reichi, but when you do plant, you know, you don't want to plant like here behind this box or like curled up somewhere, you know, because you set your whole team up for failure in regards to, well, now we can't even see the person who's defusing the bomb. You know, we have to play it correctly, or if we leave anything on the table, you know, they're going to take it. They have more grounds. But with map control like this, literally all 5 players can swing this bomb. You know, there's not a player on the team, and there's not an angle that is unchecked. It's like, yes, you have the teleporter. I don't know if this is true, but I assume if you're a good economy, this is like fish in a barrel, right? I mean, I would assume that this is probably not the hardest thing in the world. Maybe it is. I don't know. You know, depends on who you have coming in the other end of the teleporter, but, you know, she's not alone either. But, like, these two here can watch the entirety of these 2 extremely long angles. And then you also have, you know, the ability to, if these, you know, your point players get dropped, you know, she can flank up here and do this, or you know, like, now she's upside down. But, you know, there's options with this kind of thing. Everybody can potentially stop the bomb, so the defuse for the bomb. So, you know, I get discouraged when, you know, we plant the bomb, we have side control, and we still plant here. You know, like, plant in the open. You know, this is why you need the site control to do the plant, because the site control sets you up for post plant. What I think made the fast plant here so powerful is because there actually is an avenue to protect this. You get it down, bam, like, you know, this is solid, this is good. It's just become increasingly more difficult to play. But something like this, where the amount of map control you have, I think is more, it's more manageable. I think you can do more with it. So, you know, this is kind of 2 examples of what site control could potentially look like.
1.
Now we know some of the basics of how the map is set up. How do we play it? The answer, as usual, is watch for mistakes, minimize your own. I like to push a site repeatedly, try and force him to overcommit. This won't always work, but is good conditioning. If you do the same thing 4 rounds in a row, and round 5 they don't see what's expected, you may be able to force them to misplay or miss time. Don't be afraid to rotate early. If your team is being shut down or outplayed, you can't always force it. Ice, Michelle ult, half the team eat a nade, get out of there. As you rotate, see if you can catch somebody out of position. Don't be afraid to bait the team to rotate by hiding and re-hit the same site. After they leave, good teams will leave players behind or scout, use the numbers advantage to run them over. It's okay to be slow,
Bomb carrier
however you need
knocked
an
down.
advantageous position. Players like to stand in choke points and end up dying. Push through chokes if able to reach more ideal positioning. If you have momentum, don't be afraid to rush through spawn or mid and work the death ball. Trade
Attackers
utility
win.
and abilities for something. Make sure that when you are using a resource, you are gaining something. While this can't always be the case, the more often you get value from your abilities and your utility will set you up for more success. What should you prioritize? Keep man advantage, run through isolated players. Playing for kills can often be the play. Keep it simple and don't overcomplicate
The
till needed.
battle is about to start.
Map control. If you don't have map control, you probably shouldn't plant.
5,
Controlling the
4,
map allows the
3,
positioning for better
2,
plays. It
1.
forces the enemy team to make riskier plays. Plant, post-plant situation. Early plants are risky if you blow all your resources and are met with the full brunt of enemy retake. Plant checklist. This is a list of things I kind of like to mentally check as the bomb is going down or we need to start thinking about plant. Do we have man advantage? Do we have site control? What retake ults can we expect from defense? Active gunfights? How much time? How much utility? What friendly ultimates do we have? Remember, while planting, your team is effectively down one whole player. You have one less gun for your team fight. Just having one additional player in a team fight leads you almost to an 80% chance of winning said team fight. It's very much in your favor to swing the man advantage in team fights. Time. Watching the clock is its own win condition. If you get too low on time, the bomb will have to go down in order to allow enough time for more team deathmatch. Thank you guys for watching. Shout out to Forlorn Penguin and the other content creators. I can't imagine anybody watched through all of this, but thank you if you did. I'm still kind of working on my content, but just wanted to say thank you again. Have a great day.
私が見えるかしら。